We're ready.
Okay, well, welcome. Most of you know me, but the few here that maybe haven't been to any of our presentations previously, I'm Kathy Jack. I'm the current president of the Grove City Area Historical Society and Museum. And we're so pleased tonight to welcome our speaker, who is Nathan Depew. Nathan grew up in Slippery Rock. He founded Earth, Sun, Moon Trading Company in 1996. His company has grown to employ over 200 people and was twice recognized as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in the United States by Inc. magazine's Inc. 500 list. We have a special gratification to Nathan because he and his staff has helped us out with many times with our graphic designing needs at no cost to us, which is very generous of us. So because of that, we wanted to give you our new edition of The Way We Were. You did the graphic work, helped us with that graphic work on that one, and we appreciate that. So I'll turn it over to Nathan now.
All right, well, thank you for having me. I'm going to tell a joke. It has nothing to do with my business, but I'm not the best public speaker, and my understanding is if you say something funny, everything else goes fine. But I just heard this joke the other day. There was this old fella, and he was up in his bedroom, and he was on death's door. He was coming to the end of his days. And he woke up and he thought he smelled something. He thought, that smells exactly like chocolate chip cookies. What I wouldn't give for one more cookie. So he gets out of bed and he makes his way across the floor, down the stairs very carefully, comes into the kitchen, and sure enough, there's just a pile of chocolate chip cookies on the table, and his wife's just baking away. So he makes his way over to the table and goes to grab one, and she comes and slaps his hand and says, "Don't touch those are for the funeral." Now that we got that out of the way. So I've been asked many times over the years how I became an entrepreneur, how I started the company, why I started the company, and I've never had a real simple, short answer to that question. Because in thinking about it, thinking back on it, the answer is very intertwined with my interests and experiences like from a young child. And since I've been asked to talk to the Historical Society, I thought, well, maybe I'll start from the very beginning. They probably like dates, they probably like that sort of thing. And so I was born in 1969 here in Grove City. I suppose it was called Grove City Hospital at that time. It's medical center now, but and the doctor who delivered me was Dr. Jones. Anyone know Dr. Jones? Or know of him? Well, I only met him once when I was born, so I don't remember him very well. But neither of us knew at the time that 35 years later I would buy his house that he built in 1950 on Kettler Drive. So kind of strange. I didn't find that out till recently. Wait, Dr. Jones delivered me? That was kind of neat. Some of my earliest memories as a child are spending countless hours drawing. I love to draw things like battleships and castles and trains and airplanes and that sort of thing. And I spend countless hours doing that. I love to design things and build things. So I love things. I really enjoyed Lincoln Logs, Tinker Toys, and Legos. I like most little boys. I was the kid that built the 3-story tree house out of scrap wood in my backyard. And, the kid that modified my bicycle with a cassette player and a couple speakers run off a 6-volt battery. And I was always interested in creating, making, doing things. And I became a paper boy so I could buy things like 6-volt batteries to power my cassette deck on my bicycle with. My other great love as a child was the game of baseball. I spent countless hours all summer long playing baseball with the neighbor kids from dawn until dusk. And from there, I developed a love for baseball cards. And of course, I was 10 years old when the Pirates won a World Series in 1979. Some of you may remember that they actually won a World Series. And I think I knew every stat of every player on the team. And eventually I amassed a fairly large baseball card collection, and I would get my mom to take me to these baseball card shows where people would buy and sell and trade. And that was something that I really got into. So looking at some of these early interests, drawing and making, buying and selling, these are my first experiences in design and commerce. I didn't know it at the time, I was just a kid doing kid stuff. And then in high school I got my hands on an old acoustic guitar. And I don't remember where I got it, but it wasn't a very good guitar, but I learned how to play it, taught myself how to play the guitar. And I'm guessing that was because girls probably think guys are cool to play the guitar. That's probably why I picked it up in high school. But nonetheless, and as I got more and more into music, I eventually decided to sell my beloved baseball card collection. And I brought a really cool electric guitar and an amp. And so it was kind of my rite of passage into more like teenagerdom. And then, what's a guy do when he buys an electric guitar and an amp? Well, he starts a rock band. So I did that in the late 1980s. I started a band. It was called Stinging Rain, and we recorded 3 CDs of original music and traveled and performed kind of a wide area, up and down the East Coast and up far as west maybe as Chicago. And we were very serious about it. And in fact, so serious that we all dropped out of college to pursue music full time. And I was quite sure at the time that this is what I was going to do for a living. Like somehow, some way, I was going to do this for a living. But do any of you know the difference between a musician and a large pizza? A large pizza can feed a family of 4. So it turned out that my musical aspirations weren't meant to be. The band came to an end at the end of 1993. By this time I was married and had a child and had another one on the way. I didn't realize it at the time, but those years of trying to make it in a band taught me a lot. There was a creative process of writing music. There was a collaborative process of working with other people to try to attain a goal, the other guys in the band. And there are all kinds of things we did to market and manage the affairs of the band, booking gigs and designing posters and t-shirts to sell at shows and album covers and all that sort of thing. And although I gained a lot of experience, I was left in a pretty tight spot. We had just recorded an album, and studios were very expensive. And so we were $40,000 in debt, which was, to me, like it might as well have been $1 million in debt. And I had a growing family and no college degree because I dropped out to pursue music. So at that point, I think it was one of my low points. I was very discouraged. I felt very much like a loser. I didn't feel like I had many options. But while I was doing music, we got to the point where we were traveling so much that it was very hard to hold down a job. Some months we would play 10 to 15 shows in a month. And so I started picking up, I'd done a little in high school, a little bit of odd jobs, construction, painting sort of thing. So I started doing some construction work. And in fact, some of you may remember June's Brides on Broad Street. Anybody remember June's Brides? Well, just before I got married, I went in to June's Brides. I can't remember the name of the lady. Somebody said it, I probably
Kate Phipps.
Kate Phipps. And there was an apartment for rent, a 1-bedroom apartment for rent above June's Brides. And that summer I had just worked construction and the job ended and I was unemployed and about 2 weeks from getting married. And Kate said, well, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I do, construction stuff, painting, that sort of thing. She said, oh, isn't that wonderful? Well, we have some jobs here. Do you have things we could get done here in the shop? There's some rooms we need to be repainted. Do you have a card? I said, no, not yet, but I'll bring you one in a few days. So I went and got cards made and brought her a card, and that was the first job I did on my own. And so anyways, I had been doing that all along when we were in the band days. So that was pretty much my only option. So I put myself, I tried really hard full time to go into doing remodeling. I did a lot of roofing, vinyl siding, replacement windows, kind of learned as I went. And it was one of the first times I figured out like kind of, I don't know, like marketing in like by the situation. And for me it was the weather. So if we had, a week of really, really hard rains, I would get signs made up, and back then there was Bilo, and you could put a sign on a bulletin board, and there were some other places, and say, need a new roof? Give me a call. Or if in the winter there's like big ice dams would get built up on people's roofs, and you drive around town, and you would see all the gutters hanging down, I'd put a sign, need new gutters? Give me a call. So I was always looking for something bad to happen with the weather so that I could put a sign up and I'm your guy. So I did that for a number of years, and it went okay. Like I eventually learned how to become competent in a number of things, and got to the point where I was having pretty regular work. But I started getting restless after several years, and I had this vague feeling or idea that there was something else I was meant to do, and I couldn't really put a finger on it, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what that would be. And so that's right about when I was visiting my mother-in-law in 1996, and she had this old set of German encyclopedias, all right? And they were probably 100 plus years old. And they had these beautiful full-color lithographs in them of all kinds of, I was really attracted to the ones that were the nature lithographs. And I just had this very naive thought that I could take these really old images and put them on t-shirts and sell a lot of them. Of course, it was very naive, but I didn't know that at the time. And so I rented the basement of Snyder's Music and More. Does anyone remember Snyder's Music and More on Broad Street? It was owned by Ralph and Margie Snyder. I'm trying to put a lot of these details in for the Historical Society. So I rented the basement, and I think she rented it to me for a few $100s a month. And there was actually some offices in the basement. I think the guy that started Forta Corporation used to run something there. He used to have a pharmacy there or something like that. And had a little bit of warehouse space. And of course, I took a cash advance out of a credit card and went and I took 12 of these designs and got them printed on t-shirts. And at that time, Ethan Printing did all the printing for me because I had no equipment. And then I went to my first trade show in New York City, and of course, I didn't know anything. I hardly knew what trade shows were, but I knew you could go to these shows and buyers from retail stores would come and buy your stuff. And I thought, I got to get a really cool prop for in my booth, so I went out and bought this giant fiberglass gorilla. And I thought, people are really going to think that's cool. So everyone thought the gorilla was cool, but nobody bought any of my shirts. So that was the beginning of my long and difficult education. Of course, I had to figure out why didn't anyone buy these shirts. So slowly but surely, over time, I come out with new designs, more designs, figured out more and more what I was doing. But it took a full 5 years before the company became profitable. So for 5 years, my wife was extremely patient. We were having children. We were getting deeper and deeper into debt. Things just weren't quite working. And then finally turned the corner in about 2001, 2002. And so basically what the company looked like back then is we would create designs and we would sell them to retail stores around the country. And we did that through going to lots of trade shows, and we eventually ended up having sales reps. And so a funny thing happened when I was in the basement of Snyder's Music and More in 1998, which was about 2 years after I started the company. Margie Snyder walked down the steps, and she had a couple guys, well-dressed men in suits. And I thought, oh, geez, what did I do? And she said, Nathan, these guys are from a company called U.S. Investigation Services. I don't think I did anything. And she said, they want to rent this building. And I want to retire. And I'm not making any money selling CDs and anyways anymore. Would you like to buy this building off of me and rent it to them? And of course I said, yes. And then she said, great, we'll get the details figured out later. I met the guys. They're like, yeah, could we be in about a month or two? And they were very intense. They really wanted to get things going. So that was the beginning of USIS in Grove City.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I later went to Margie and said, Margie, you see, the problem is I don't have any money. And she said, well, maybe you could come up with a down payment, and then I could just do the rest on our article of agreement. I said, okay. So I went and got a cash advance out of a credit card, gave her a down payment, and that was the beginning of my interest in real estate. So as we grew over the first 5 years, 2001, we needed another location. We were renting the basement of Snyder's Music and More in Grove City and the second floor of Burdick's, the whole second floor. So as you can imagine, all the sets had steps up and down, and we needed a bigger place. And I had made a verbal agreement with a fellow to buy a building, little in Grove City, and it was a nice building. I was really excited. I made the agreement just before I had to go on a business trip. And when I got back from the business trip, I called the guy and he said, oh, somebody else swooped in and bought it out from under you, sorry. And so I was discouraged, and so what did I do? I went to the Nemo's beer distributor to get some beer. And when I walked in, I looked at the building and I said to the guy, do you want to sell this building? And he said, yes. I said, how much? And he told me the price. I said, okay. And we shook hands. And then he said, are you serious? I said, yes. But are you serious? And he said, yes. So I was able to purchase the old Nemo's building, which is 111 North Center Street. Everyone probably remembers, most of you probably remember Nemo's. And I think it originally was a Carriage Works. You probably know this better than I do. But so we renovated that building. And eventually then we were able to get our own equipment, so we were able to start producing our own t-shirts. And so first we got screen printing equipment, and then we got embroidery equipment, and we to embroider hats and polo shirts and that sort of thing. And as time went on, keep in mind that the main part of the business was a wholesale business. We designed nature and outdoor products and sold them to retail stores. The kind of stores we sold to were like state parks, national parks, gift shops, mail order catalogs, resorts, that sort of thing. Online retailing started to become a thing in the 2000s, early 2000s, and we eventually developed our retail website, so we started selling the products directly to consumers. And then eventually, what's called digital printing became something that was new technology that was happening in the late 2000s. And traditional printing, there's a lot of setup to a job, so you want to run big runs. And digital printing allowed us to run small runs, or like one at a time, shirts. And so we started a division of the company that people could personalize. We would come up with a design, and then people could put their name in and personalize it. And so I've got a few catalogs, and you can see more what I'm talking about after. And that part of the company really took off for us, and it's now probably 85% of what we do. That division is called Ink Pixie, and the original division of the original company is Earth, Sun, Moon. So we built on several times there. I think 3 editions we built there, and then eventually in 2013 we bought the building that was owned by Lindbergh's. There's probably a history of that building. I think somebody was selling wicker out of there, or it's on the corner of Grant Street and Erie. I'm assuming you guys are interested in like the history of the buildings. Okay, I don't want to bore you with this stuff. And we rented that building, so it got us up to about 50,000 square feet total between the two buildings. So the company has grown quite a bit over the years. As Nancy, it's Nancy, right? Kathy, Jack. Kathy said we employ over 200 people, all here in Grove City, and we now have 4 divisions. The original division, where we sell nature products to retail stores, and then our personalized division, where we sell personalized products, mostly online. And then we also do custom printing, so if somebody wants a logo printed on a shirt or embroidered on a hat, we can do that. And then we also have a direct-to-consumer website for our nature products as well. In recent years, we have added other kinds of equipment. As I mentioned that we do digital printing, embroidery, screen printing. We also have laser engraving machines where we do laser etching on wood and glass. We're also adding flatbed UV printers where we can print things like wall art. And we just recently added a machine that'll print full color on glassware. So obviously it's a competitive world out there, so we're continuing to try to find ways to stay competitive and be unique in a marketplace where Amazon is destroying everybody. But so I wanted to give you get plenty of time. How am I doing here? To answer questions. Those are just kind of some of the details about the company and the history of the company. But I wanted to give just a few minutes here on what I think is most important about our company. And I'll read from our company handbook about the management philosophy. I want Earth, Sun, Moon to be a good place to work for one simple reason, because it is the right thing to do. We spend a lot of time on the job. If the workplace is miserable, then the misery often follows us home, casting a long shadow over the precious time we spend with family or friends. If the workplace is good, then we walk out of the door with our dignity intact and are better able to make the most of our time with family or friends. So it's that simple to me. A bad company makes your quality of life worse. A good company makes your quality of life better. It's true that no job will be without its problems. There is a certain measure of stress and difficulty awaiting us each day when we punch in. There is often not much that can be done about the ordinary problems that arise during a typical workday. However, I do believe that there is much that can be done to avoid the extraordinary problems that are often inflicted by management. That extra layer of stress perpetuated in the name of productivity or progress or profits. Sure, every employee should seek to be productive and help the company progress and achieve profitability, but not at the expense of the person's sanity and dignity. I believe the only way to accomplish this is to put people first and profit second. Of course, this sounds nice, but what does it mean? It means that no person should be seen as a means to an end, a mere cog in the wheel. It means that the policies of the company should be ordered toward the good of all, not just the good of the owner. It means that fair wages, good benefits, and shared profits. It means that each person should be treated with dignity and respect and never belittled. It means that the company should never consider its needs to be more important than the needs of each individual and their family. This, of course, is easier said than done. It's never easy to match up high ideals to the nitty-gritty of each day. However, I view this work in progress as the most important work that I do. I believe that to some extent the success of every person in the company is at stake.
We need a PA system.
So that's my story, the story of my company. Any questions? Sorry we don't have a PA system. Yo.
Where did you come up with the name of the company?
Well, I just wanted something big and cosmic. And I knew I was going to be doing nature stuff, so I just chose Earth, Sun, Moon. Yeah.
You have some outstanding personalities that you've drawn from the community with specific strengths. Would you tout some of those people or
Oh, some of the people that work for me?
Yeah, that you're able to bring from this community, because oftentimes those people have to leave the community, and you've found them.
I've found a lot of wonderful people. Do you want me to talk? How about I'll talk about some of the people that you may never in a million years think. I had this one guy that said 3 words when I gave him an interview, and he's probably said about 10 words since. But he's the guy that walked in with a sweatshirt on that gave me the idea to start the division of the company that's 80% of the company. He didn't come up with the idea. He just happened to walk in my office and have a college t-shirt on. It's a long story, and then he walked back out. He never said a word. And I wrote down this idea that I had and sat there for about a year, and then I started the company. So good ideas can come from strange places. But you want me to talk about some of the people that...
Well, you have graphics people, you have people that are strong in accounting, you
Yeah,
have person.
Yeah, we have 6 or 7 really great graphic designers. We've got a couple of people in product development. We've got a number of people in accounting, marketing, sales, customer service. Do you want me to name names or what?
Sure, go ahead. How about Kim Zorn?
Kim Zorn, that's my assistant. She's been there at least 15 years. Yeah, and I think she used to work at Wendell August, I believe, but she was hired in customer service, and at some point I said, I need someone to help me figure out where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be doing next. So she's in the office beside me and does a wonderful job at that.
Can I turn that around?
Mm-hmm.
What William just asked you and say, have you been able to find the talent here that you need, or do you have to look outside?
For the most part, as things get more complicated in running running a business where you're selling something on a national level, almost always I've been able to find people around the city. We've been blessed to attract some really good people. But as time has gone on and we're looking for very specific skill sets, that's been a bit harder. I've hired some people from the New England area, a couple people. So we have hired some people from had to hire some people from out of state for very, very specific competencies. When I started this company, we only needed a few core competencies to be competitive, and now we need at least 12 or 15 as a company to be competitive in the marketplace. So it is getting harder. Yeah.
Nathan?
Yeah.
Tell them about, in the process of your business, there was one particular idea that really flourished. It may have been the young man with the T-shirt and the college.
Yeah, at the very beginning, when I was struggling to get things going, the big breakthrough was I got the idea to start packaging T-shirts as gift items. So one of the first things we did was we did these kids T-shirts for kids that had like fireflies on them or different kinds of bugs, and we packed them in a little plastic bug catching jar. And I had a guy make a little machine for me where it punched holes in the lid, and we put a little educational thing about fireflies in there, and we sold a lot of those to like natural science museums. So that was kind of what really helped us take off in the early years. Is instead of just here's another guy selling T-shirts, they were actually gift items. We did bird-related shirts and a little wicker bird nest that I imported, and a lot of things like that. So that really helped.
That was one of the areas we traveled around different parts of the country, go into stores, and there your products were.
Yeah, well, that means we're still in business. I'm always happy to hear
One of the big
Right?
one of the big ones was Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
They had a lot of your products. One of the other things that you did was T-shirts of a college with your name on
Yeah.
it. Tell them about that.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll tell that story a little more formally. This fellow that walked into my office, his last name was Luther, and he had a Luther College sweatshirt on. And he said 3 words to me actually during that interview. When I asked him, I said, "Where'd you get that at?" And did you get that at Luther College? He said, "Yeah." Did you go to Luther College? No. Did they just send you something in the mail because your last name was Luther? He said, and walked out. But I had this idea because I knew that digital printing was coming and that we could do things one at a time. That what if we mailed it as mailed postcards to people, like everyone with the last name Armour, and as long as it wasn't a real university, what if we mailed them postcards that had shirts that said Armour University on them? And that worked really, really well. So that was our first personalized design. That really transformed the company. So the postscript of that story is 5 years later, that fellow walked in my office with that original Luther College. We never said a word about it. He never said anything to me, on a hanger, and hung it on my bookstand, bookstand, and walked out without saying a word. And it's still hanging there. Yeah.
So I received some direct mail from you, and I was really surprised and impressed because when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is really impressive. First of all, they know we have a certain amount of acreage because we were sent a marketing piece for hunting camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, this is some pretty advanced databasing that they're going through to figure out who has certain acreage in certain places. And also our names are already on the designs.
Mm-hmm.
And I flip it over and I'm like, this isn't Grove City. So that goes to show some, and actually I went to order it and the website said I couldn't order it until 3 months later because you were completely full of custom orders.
Yes, we've had some trouble in the last 2 Christmases. That's why we've been trying to figure out ways to hire more people this Christmas. Are you asking a question or you're just...
I thought that was, I mean, are those in-house people that are formulating those ads and pulling the data?
Right, yeah, we try to be clever on who we're mailing to, and there's a lot of work as far as trying to understand data and mailing lists.
Right, well, I realized that extrapolating that data would be...
Yeah, it's a complicated affair, Anyone else?
Do you have a retail store or is it all online?
It's all online.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about full color printing on glass. What's your vision for that?
Well, we're doing a lot of printing on things like pint glasses and those sorts of things. And what we do, again, we put designs on that people can personalize. So it might be like she said, Smith's hunting camp on a pint glass that you can have at your hunting camp.
I see a lot of advertisements right now for printing photographs, your own personal photographs on glass and on metal.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts?
That's something we don't do at this point. Something we may do someday. Yeah.
As a small company in a small town, do you get approached a lot by somebody that says, look, we're going to move you to Pittsburgh, move you to Cleveland to buy your company, and you can quadruple your size in 3 years?
Well, from time to time, someone shows an interest in buying the company. I wouldn't say it's so much like move you to a different location. Because of what we do, our location really isn't, a big factor on how much we can sell. It's all our none of our sales are really local. So, not much. I mean, we're mainly marketing nationwide. So in many ways, I find it wonderful to have a company in Grove City. There's lots of great people here, a lot of great employees, just a lot of solid citizens, and no traffic and all the things you'd have to worry about in Pittsburgh. Maybe not as many sushi options, but I'm okay.
You have some?
Yes.
Are your children interested in following through? On
Not
what you
yet.
did?
They're doing all different things. Yeah.
You have some in college.
Yeah, I have one is a film editor in New York City. One is works for the Forest Service. One works for a robotics company in Pittsburgh. And
Keep going, Nathan. Keep
Uh,
going.
Keep going in college, and then there's other ones not in college. Yeah. 9, by the way.
Oh.
Get that out.
Do you ever encourage them to drop out of college?
I don't think this is a recipe for success, my story. I think it's really strange. No, I don't. On the flip side, though, if they didn't see college as something that made sense to them, I wouldn't force them to push them to do that.
I have 2 things. One, I was a fan of Nathan's and supportive him, particularly with his first child, which we delivered. Right?
With the what?
First child.
Oh,
You
yes,
do?
yes. Dr. Armour delivered our first
Yeah.
child, yes. Yeah.
And after a while, there were so many, and I retired, so. The second.
Watch out, Josh might buy your house someday.
And then the other thing is, as Kathy mentioned, we really want to thank you, Nathan, for all the support you've given to us. Now, you have supported many other things in town, just kind of under the radar. He has done that. And we just thank you for that, Nathan.
Sure.
And some of the success of the Historical Society is related to Nathan, and just that reprint of the book, that first book would not have been possible without Nathan and him contributing a designer that worked through it. And it is a nice book, but he did that. And then we came up with a second book, and he did the same thing. And we came up with a third book, and he's done the same thing.
I'm a sucker.
So we really want to thank you, Nathan, for all of this that you have done. And there's other little things that he's done too. So it isn't just the Historical Society. It's the whole, many aspects in the community. And so, thanks, Nathan.
Yep.
Any other questions? So what's your life mantra? If you had to sum it up in one sentence.
I always tell my kids, don't be stupid. Sum up my life mantra in one sentence. I should have been prepared.
Is that your mantra? I should
Well, my faith is extraordinarily important to me, and I think doing all things for the glory of God, which I rank up there pretty high, whether it be my work or family or whatever.
It's pretty obvious.
He lives his faith.
Anybody else?
Yeah, one other thing.
Yes, sir.
When I've been running some 5Ks, I've noticed that you've been there.
Yes.
When do you find time to run?
Early in the morning. Yeah, I love to run. Yeah. In my 20s, I put on a bunch of muscle doing construction work, and in my 30s, I put on a bunch of fat sitting at a desk. And in my 40s, my wife said, "You've got to do something." So I started running.
Well, thank you so much. And I can't, we have refreshments here for everybody. Help yourselves to refreshments, but I do have to do our little pitch. We are fortunate to have our spring and fall seminars. We do not charge admission for our seminars. We're happy to have people come in and see our building. but we also are very happy to have donations left for us because we exist as a nonprofit completely on donations and gifts. So if you find it in your heart on your way out, there's a donation box, but please stay around, and maybe Nathan can stay a little bit. He has to slip out pretty quickly. He has family commitments, but you can maybe talk to him a little bit and enjoy some refreshments with us. Thank you. I also have there's newsletters. If you're not a member here or don't know anything about us, please pick up a newsletter, and there's newsletters out there also.
All of these things.